G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. My name's Kaitlyn and I'm an American living in beautiful Sydney, Australia. I've lived in Australia for a little over a year and let me tell you, it has been an absolute roller coaster ride. I'd been preparing to move over here for well over a year and a half before I actually got to. I've been here a little over a year and some things have been amazing, some things have been incredibly disappointing. It's been a wild ride. So you know what, today we're just doing a really chill, relaxed, like chit-chat video with you guys. I've got a cocktail here, or maybe not so much a cocktail, it's like my little comfort drink, vanilla vodka and Coke. That is like my go-to comfort drink. And today we're just gonna have a little chit-chat video. I'm just gonna be brutally honest about what it's like moving over to Australia, especially moving over as an American and moving over on a partner visa. There are so many channels out there that talk about moving and they talk about it like it's this most incredible, wonderful, nothing wrong with it at all experience. And let me tell you guys, honestly, there are highs and there are lows. Would I give up and go back to the States? Absolutely not. I love living here. I love being here with my Aussie partner. I love how warm and welcome and inviting so many Aussies have been, not just here on their Australian family, but actual Aussies around me. Friends and family over here have been wonderful. But there are some downsides to it too, so I'm going to talk about the highs and lows, and I'm just going to be brutally honest with you guys today. So this is just going to be a chit-chat video. I will try to in some way, shape, or form, actually keep to certain topics just to sort of keep things relevant and avoid me rambling throughout everything. And if there's any particular topic you guys want to see, I will try to timestamp them below if I don't ramble too much from one topic into another. So grab a bicky, grab a cuppa, or grab a beverage, and let's get right into this video. So the first thing I have on this list to talk about are visa and visa issues that have come up. So for me, coming over was a very unusual time period, and it was during COVID that Mark and I had applied for my prospective marriage visa. It took about a year for that to be approved, and because of COVID there were some extensions and some timeline changes because the borders were still shut. I don't know what the rules are now. I don't know if it's still a 9-month requirement to enter Australia and get married within that 9 months. I don't know if they've extended that at all post-COVID. There's so many things that I don't know because I don't need to apply for that visa now. And I applied at a very, very, very weird time. And now I've applied for my 820 visa and I'm still waiting. I am trying to wait as patiently as I can. You can't call the government and the Department of Home Affairs and get an update on your visa. You just have to apply and wait. There are very, very few rare emergency exceptions where you can get in touch with somebody over there, but they're few and far between, and they have to be a genuine emergency, not just you're tired of waiting or you miss your partner and you don't want to be apart any longer, or this is holding up getting a mortgage or something. No, it has to basically be like life or death for it to be an actual emergency. So I'm stuck here waiting as patiently as I can, although I'm getting so impatient and it's only been a few months. And I know people have had to wait years for their visas to be approved. And I keep telling myself in the back of my mind, if I get a double grant, it will be worth the wait. If they pick it up and they give me the dual grant, which is my temporary visa and my permanent residency all in one go, I can wait. I can hold out. I have something to look forward to. But if they only give me the 820, I am going to be so frustrated if they keep me waiting. And then I have to wait another 2 years up until November 2024 when I can apply for the permanent residency. Mark and I have been in a long-distance relationship for a very long time. We've been committed to each other since the get-go. We combined our finances very, very early on. The problem is because of COVID, we couldn't live together. So we have some limited evidence for that regarding our relationship. Obviously, since I moved over here, I've been put on the lease. We have a lot of information. We have mail addressed to both of us. We have a joint checking account, or I think it's just a joint everyday savings account or something it's called over here. But we have so much evidence that shows that we've been in a genuine long-term committed relationship. But I don't know if that's the evidence that they're going to need. And when it comes to these cases, they don't really have a lot of wiggle room. It is pretty black and white when it comes to whether or not you're able to get the dual grant or not. Sorry, of course now there's a helicopter going overhead, which is just lovely. That's not going to interrupt the sound at all. When you're coming over here, the visas are going to take a while. Like, this isn't an overnight, you decide you want to come to Australia and then within a week you have the visa and you can come over. If you're coming over, I feel like unless it's a working holiday visa, they can grant those pretty quickly. But even some tourist visas for a lot of countries do take a long time to be reviewed and approved. And some of them get rejected pretty regularly, as even those tourist visas. If you're coming over on work visas and whatnot, they still take a while to be approved, and oftentimes it's tied to your job, so you have to actually either find a job over here or get the required registration or the certificates before you can get a job, and then your visa is tied to that job. It's not easy to move over here, and a lot of Aussies have this misconception that it's incredibly easy to get a visa. Maybe like 20 years ago it was, but now the visa rules have changed so much. It's so time consuming. It's such a long process, even for people who need to come over here to fill work shortages. It's not a quick and easy move to come over to Australia. So even though people talk about how many visa options are out there and there's so many different pathways to get into Australia or to get permanent residency over here, it's not as easy as people make it out to be. It's a long, time-consuming, and often expensive process. For example, on a partner visa, it cost me about $9,000 Australian just for the visas alone. That's not including the medical checks. It's not including compiling all the documents that we needed. That's not including the actual wedding, because I did come over on a prospective marriage visa. So getting married was a requirement for us. There are all these other factors that play into these visas that some people just don't touch on their channel, or they brush over it very quickly and briefly, almost like it's something that's not worth mentioning or not really worth considering. If somebody's coming over on a visa, that visa costs a lot of money, you guys. It's not easy, particularly if you're coming over on work visas or partner visas. People seem to think that partner visas are like the easiest way to come over here, and to be honest, absolutely not. It's one thing if you came over on a working holiday visa and you've been with your partner for years and you've been living together for years, but you just want to formalize it and fill out the paperwork. That's one thing. But for people who, like Mark and I, were in a long distance relationship, it is not easy. It really does put a strain. It tests your relationship. It costs a lot of money. There's so many documents that need to be put together. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to get these visas put through. And tying into my second point, moving really does put a strain on a lot of your relationships. Not just your relationship with your partner, but your relationship with your family, your relationship with friends. Guys, I'm so lucky to have Mark, really. He has been so kind and so patient and so thoughtful. And the first 6 months moving over here were tough because we were having high highs and low lows. I would have days where homesickness would strike and I would be just practically in tears, but at the same time, I never once regretted moving over here. It was never, oh, I wish we hadn't moved over here. It was like, I'm happy that I'm here, but I so miss my family and friends. And this puts such a strain on the Aussie partner in these types of relationships because it puts a lot of burden and a lot of pressure on them. Not only do they have to be supportive of a partner moving over for them, but they also have to start adapting to having somebody new living in a house with them. You have to figure out which side of the bed you guys are going to sleep on and who's going to be the one doing the dishes and who's going to walk the dog in the morning. All of these sorts of stuff that people at some stage in the relationship have to go through. This is all thrust upon you at once. And there's also some financial burden too. I mean, what if I hadn't been able to get a job right away? What if it took like 6 months for me to find something stable over here? That would have just made him the breadwinner, and that would have put a lot of financial stress on us as well. Like, it's not easy being the Aussie partner in a relationship like this, having only half of a support group. If you think about it, for the most part in a lot of, say, more stable relationships, there's the husband and the wife's side of the family and their friend groups. Well, you're cutting out 50% of that. My friends and the vast majority, my family and the vast majority of my friends, sorry, I should have flipped that, are over in the States. I have a couple friends over here, but I don't think there's anybody who I can really call on if there's like a huge, dire emergency. Maybe one friend that I can think of. She's been amazing. We've been friends for years. But overall, I don't have much of a support network over here outside of his friends and family. So it puts a little bit of a strain on me to make sure that his friends and family like me. Which I know does sound a little bit odd. Obviously, whenever you're in a relationship, you want the partner's friends and family to like you. But I feel like it puts so much extra pressure on me to make sure that they like me, so that way there's no strain between Mark and his relationships, between his family, between his friends. Like, I kind of go above and beyond a little bit just to make sure that they like me. It's also affected a lot of my relationships back home. I still talk to some of my friends on a regular basis, but it's never with the same depth that there was before, because we don't know exactly when we're going to see each other again. Now, granted, Mark and I are going over to the States, and I told my friends the dates that we're coming and the possible dates that we can meet up with them. But after that, I'm like, once we come back from Philly, our plan is to not go over until we have a house, because it costs so much money, you guys. It's one thing if there's a funeral or something that comes up and I can fly over there for a week for a funeral. That's like an out of the norm circumstance. But as far as like a trip to go see everybody, we're not planning to go back over to Philly for probably a few years. And that does put quite a strain on my relationships with friends and family back home. Obviously, we keep in touch and we talk about what's going on here and what's going on there and the few things that we have in common with each other. But it's tough when you can't just go and hang out with somebody for a few hours. You can't go and catch up over dinner or something. You have to either schedule video chats or you're just talking through Messenger. They say that you're going to miss your friends and family when you move abroad, but it puts a real strain on a lot of relationships as well. And some people don't take it well. Some people will guilt trip you and will continue to guilt trip you, even if it's unintentionally when you move. So moving abroad does put a huge strain on most of your relationships. I feel like I need to drink at this. Do you like the other side of the cup too? We got this from Grey Gums Cafe up on Putty Road. Absolutely love that place. I've talked about it in a few videos. Absolutely love it up there. We go up for bike rides all the time. And next thing I want to talk about is what it's been like trying to find a friend group over here. Obviously, I can't say it's been easy. There's some people who are becoming like friendly acquaintances, sort of like outside of work. I've never been one of those people who really make friends with people they will work with. To me, there's always that professional divide. And rarely have I found anybody at work who shares enough of a common interest or a common bond of anything outside of work to really form a friendship with them. There's some people who I worked with back in the States who I still keep in touch with, and we message once in a while, and we might go and catch them and get drinks with them when we're over in the States. But like, they're work friends. Like, it's not the people that I go to about the super emotional stuff, the stuff that's been challenging, the stuff that I need to bounce ideas off of. I've never considered them really close friends. They've always been work friends. Over here, I've started to make some friendships, but it's not to the same extent that I had over in the States. I have a meetup group that I go to pretty regularly, and there's some people who I'm starting to form a little bit of a friendship with the people who are there. But because you're only going like once a month to meet up with these people, you don't talk to them too much. It's one of those things where it'll take a little bit of time to build up these friendship groups. And I'm okay with it. I understand that it does take a little bit of time, but I've been here for over a year and I feel like I have the exact same friends that I had a year ago moving over here. And it's a little bit tough, to be honest. I don't have that group of like 3 or 4 friends where we can just go out one Saturday afternoon and go grab coffee and chat for hours on end. I don't have that one friend that I'm constantly texting back and forth throughout the day, bugging each other, sending each other memes and like Instagram reels and all. Like, I know it'll happen over time. The more you put yourself out there, the more likely you are to actually find somebody who's like part of your tribe. But it's been a struggle for me to really find that so far here. And I'm starting to find more of my tribe slowly, but I know it's still going to take a little bit of time. And it's kind of frustrating not having a similar sort of friend group over here that I had over in the States, a group where I was messaging people back and forth and we were checking in with each other all the time and we just had these little inside jokes. Like, I think a lot of people over here already have that friend group like solidified and set, and it's tough to either get into that sort of group or find a group of your own and make a group of your own. I think people really do underestimate just how difficult it can be making friends as an adult. You really do have to find something that you guys have in common. And for me, I'm starting to like expand my social circles a little bit more. For me, my very first year was really focusing a lot on work socially, and I feel like there was a good like 6 months where I kind of just shut down and was really struggling. And then as the weather started to get a little bit nicer here, maybe around like October, November, things started to pick up. My mood started to pick up a little bit more, and I'm more ready to get out there and meet people. But I'm struggling to find friends over here, or at least like a solid friend group. I think probably within like the next year, hopefully that'll be a little bit different. But I think that's something that a lot of people don't talk about, is when you're coming over, it's going to be a lot more difficult to find your tribe, find a social circle. We're very lucky that at least like half of us is Aussie, and Mark already has a pretty solid friend group over here, so I have them that I'll talk to once in a while. I mean, really a lot of Mark's friends are guys, and we know their wives by association, and I've become fairly friendly with them. I can talk with them a little bit here and there, but they're not the kind of people that I've like gone out and grabbed a coffee with, or they live really far away and it's not that easy to go and meet up somewhere. They're just people where we don't really have a lot in common other than the fact that our husbands are friends and we're nice and we're polite and we're cordial with each other. Overall, like, Aussies are so friendly, but I feel like there's a difference between being friendly and wanting to be your friend. And so many Aussies that I met are very friendly people, but I found very few people who seem like they're actually looking for friends or a friend group of their own here. So it's just one of those struggles that I feel like a lot of people won't necessarily talk about too much or too in depth when they talk about what it's like actually moving to Australia. So many Aussies already have their own little set friend group, so you either have to find and make your own friend group over here, which typically tends to be other immigrants, or you struggle a little bit to find your tribe and really get your foot in the door with Aussies here. Another thing I wanted to touch on was what it's been like finding work over here. And in a way, I've been very lucky because I worked in an office over in the States that gave me quite a few skills that I was able to build on. And I came over here through, like, I found my first job through a recruiter. I found my second job through a recruiter. My first job was terrible and I quit after a week. And I don't know if I walked into it with too high expectations or if it was just because things were just coming out of lockdown, we're still dealing with COVID. I didn't really have anybody who was properly training me. It was a really long commute. I was dealing with like absolutely terrible cases and it just was not a good fit. And it was so discouraging because I went from my last job where I was there for 7 years. And guys, I'm only 31. If you're at a company for 7 years at that age, you've put in a good chunk of time with that company. That's like about a quarter of your life at that point. And I had such a good rapport with them. I had a good rapport with my managers. I loved my job back in the States. And I wasn't expecting to have a job even similar to that coming over here, like office feel-wise, work-wise. I was expecting something like maybe along the same planes in the legal field. But I wasn't expecting to find like a huge, warm, welcoming company to work for. But my first job was such a big shock and I absolutely put a bad taste in my mouth coming over here. But my second job has been wonderful so far. I work for such a good company and I had such a good manager on my team. But half of my team has since left in the last like 3 months, which means we are down like 3 people. We're going to have to train 2 new people this February who are coming in. It's going to be tough. I've only been in the position for about a year and suddenly I'm going to be training new people and it's a little bit frustrating because I still have so many questions. My manager is so knowledgeable and now she's leaving and we're going to have a new manager come in and y'all know you never know what to expect with a new manager. Is it going to be somebody who's really a good fit or is it somebody who's going to tear the team apart? But on top of that, I applied for a new position at the same company where I currently work, and it's been a week at the time I'm filming this, and I haven't heard anything back, which is a little bit disheartening because I feel like this would be such a good job for me. It really does align with my past experience. It aligns with what I want to do and where I want to go, and it's been discouraging that it's been a week and I haven't heard anything. Now, they do have the position open online for a couple more weeks, and this might be the type of team where they'll wait until the end of the deadline and then offer interviews, or maybe they just haven't looked at resumes yet. But I'm sitting here nervous, hoping, waiting. I just want to hear back. I feel like this would be such a good job for me. It's within the same company, and it really does align with my prior experience, it aligns with my current experience, and aligns with what I want to do in the future. But when you're coming over here, you have to remember you're kind of, to a certain extent, starting from scratch, even if it's a field that you're familiar with, even if it's a similar type of job to what you've been working for years. you're working in a completely new culture, you're working for new companies, you're working in new positions. It's all very different. You're learning so much day to day, and it's a little bit frustrating because some people come over here and they were like in the top of their field, or the person that everybody relied on to have the answer, and then you come over and you feel like a newbie all over again, and it's frustrating to not know the answers and to go back to being that new person. It's a big shock for a lot of people, a lot of professionals who come over here and then realize they have to kind of start to an extent from the ground up. They might not be starting in, say, a receptionist position if they're a solicitor, but you're starting kind of lower than a lot of other people. And there's also a little bit of a shock with how neutral everybody is here. There isn't as much of a obvious hierarchy in a lot of companies. Obviously, you're going to find some really pretentious, snobby people who insist that the hierarchy has to be like set a certain way. But you're also going to find managers who have no problem like going out and grabbing a beer with their younger colleagues, or the people who are essentially below them in like the corporate ladder chain. Like maybe coming from the company that I came from before wasn't as much of a shock for me because a lot of us did have a pretty mutual respect for everybody regardless of what their position was. But I can imagine some other companies that I've heard about and that I've seen firsthand would not be like that at all. It's very much a hierarchy. Everybody has their own set level and you don't really associate with people outside of your level. Here in Australia, typically that's not the case. Typically everybody is considered pretty equal. It's pretty much a very respectful culture overall, like Australian work culture. I can't like pinpoint one specific company or another or a certain industry. It's pretty well respected. Like everybody's pretty well respected. But there's going to be a shock coming over if you were somebody like me who had the answers for just about everything, who was very much relied on, who was the person people would go to for answers all the time, and then you're going into a new job, a new field, a new company, a new position, a new whatever it is, and suddenly you're not the most knowledgeable, you're not the person that everybody goes to for answers. You're going to have a lot of questions yourself. It's a little bit humbling, and to be honest, it's been scary. And now I'm at the point where I need to consider what I want to do career-wise. Like I'm pivoting out of the legal field, not necessarily by choice. Part of it is just because we live so far away from the CBD, and the CBD is where most of the law firms are. I would love to stay in legal, and I've looked at a couple places in Parramatta, but there aren't that many law firms, and the ones that are, they're very small. They don't pay that well, and they typically expect somebody to already have local experience walking into the firm, which I don't have. So I'd either have to start from the ground up at a receptionist position and work my way up from there, or just pivot out of legal and try to find something else. So getting out of legal, my plan is to actually go into another sort of business, maybe business operations, business administration type area. I still want to stay in business, even if I can't be in legal. I would love to work in contracts, actually. I think contracts would be fascinating. I don't think I would ever get into like a government job, even post citizenship. I might be able to at like some of the more like lower administrative levels, but I don't think I'll ever get like any sort of executive level in any kind of government position, no matter how long I'm working for them, because I'm starting my career in Australia like typically like 10 to 15 years later than a lot of other people. But anyway, I don't know if this is going to go live before the 3rd of February or not, but keep your fingers crossed, guys. I'm really, really hoping to get this position. I think it would be absolutely wonderful for me. It would be such a chance to grow. Honestly, I've learned a lot in the position that I'm at, and I'm bored. Like, it'll be good to train some other people, but I'm bored, you guys. I need something new. I've reached the point where this is very much an admin heavy job, and I need something a little bit more mentally challenging than this. So keep your fingers crossed for me. Thoughts, prayers, good vibes, good vibrations. And the last thing that I want to talk about when it comes to this brutally honest conversation about moving to Australia and what it's like living in Australia is still dealing with the aftermath of COVID. So obviously COVID is still around, people are still testing positive for COVID, all that sort of stuff. Not going to get into that necessarily, but there's still such a huge backlog with visas, with paperwork, with just COVID delays in general. And a lot of Aussies are still in this sort of... What is going on with the dogs in this neighborhood today? And a lot of Aussies are also coming down off of the overall fear that COVID really instilled. I mean, People talk about how wonderful Australia treated COVID, and then people talk about how terribly Australia treated COVID, and you're going to find people who agree with both ends of the spectrum. The reality is there are some things that they did well and some things that they did poorly, and everyone's going to have a different opinion on this. My opinion is that overall, they did a good job of keeping COVID out for as long as they could. I understand that there were some issues with the borders being closed. The fact that the visa I'd applied on just completely fell through the cracks and they ignored was tragic and terrible and affected a lot of relationships. Like, I would have been over here a year earlier if the one partner visa that I had been on had been put with all of the other partner visas for travel exemptions. For some reason, the one that I had applied for was the only one that didn't. Whether that was intentional or not, I don't know. But we weren't granted travel exemptions until about 18 months after the border shut. So that's 18 months forced long distance. But when it comes to the daily updates, the daily news briefs, the numbers every single day, a lot of Aussies became kind of scared. Even like after the vaccine rollout and whatnot, there's some Aussies that are still kind of scared of it, and there's still a little bit of that fear and that distancing from one another that's still permeated throughout Australia. And I think it's going to be a couple years before everybody's really shaken that off. And obviously I'm talking in general. I know there's some people who are going to jump in the comments and be like, I wasn't scared of anything. The whole thing was a hoax, or whatever they want to say. Not getting into that necessarily. I'm talking about like just the general vibe that I've gotten from Aussies here. Like, people still don't want to go out if they're like traveling or anything because they're worried about catching COVID or worried about getting sick. Like, people become so much more cautious about their health, about going out around people. If there might be a flu going around or something, they are just so much more aware and self-conscious of not getting sick. People wear masks out in public now. People keep hand sanitizer on them on the regular. And I think a lot of this is just the aftermath of COVID. And to some extent, it's good that people are caring a little bit more about their health and trying not to get sick and all, but it also leads a little bit to this distancing between people that I don't think was there before. People are a lot more cautious and a lot more weary of the person sitting next to them on the train or standing behind them at the grocery store. And I feel like because of it, Aussies are starting to lose a little bit of that mateship that has always made Australia, Australia. And I'm hoping that that's something that within a couple years will start to come back. But it feels like dealing with the aftermaths of COVID, it's something that's really starting to slip away. And I'm hoping it doesn't. I hope it does come back. But after seeing COVID and the way it hit Australia, mateship is something that is slowly starting to fade from the fabric of Australia. And I'm hoping this is just a temporary thing. But the reality is, at the end of the day, I can't predict whether or not that's true. But anyway, that's it for this brutally honest chat, you guys. Just what it's like moving over here, what it's been like living here for the last year. Some of the more honest stuff that a lot of other channels won't really touch on when they talk about what it's actually like moving over to Australia. I feel like some people unintentionally gloss over it and try to keep everything as happy and upbeat, as peppy as possible. But there needs to be some more honest chats about what it's actually like moving over here, so that way when people come over, they don't feel as isolated, they don't feel as lonely, they don't feel like they're constantly messing up and making mistakes. It's something that all of us are doing. And that's one of the reasons why I don't take down my videos, where if I say something really stupid or if I make a mistake, I don't go back and edit it out. I leave it in because it's a chance for me to learn from what I was like a year ago. And it gives other people the chance to learn from my mistakes. So that's it for this video, you guys. I hope you did like it. If you did, please hit the like and subscribe button down below. I do appreciate the support, you guys. I really, really do appreciate it. And I will see you all in my next video.